continuous chatter in the mind. Thoughts can be wholesome or unwholesome or neutral, they can be distracted or restless, anxious or fearful, hateful or envious, or totally foggy. Unless we make a stab at this, we are not going to get inside ourselves, and will never find out why we feel and act the way we do. The four supreme efforts are the essence of the spiritual path. Flowers and incense, candles and bells, temples and stupas are only pleasant embellishments. Not to let an unwholesome thought arise that has not yet arisen. Not to let it continue when it has arisen. To make a wholesome thought arise which has not yet arisen. To make a wholesome thought continue which has already arisen. That's the purification process in thought that brings about purification in speech and action. When that happens, one sees more clearly. A pure mirror with a clean surface, free from dust and dirt, is one that reflects a pure image.
Effort is needed for whatever we do, especially for meditation. The effort in meditation often doesn't seem to bring any immediate results. Because of that, the mind is unable to resurrect the effort because it wants to see some results. This is attachment, clinging, and wanting. It's desire and therefore suffering. This applies to whatever we do. We have expectations of results, and when they are not fulfilled, dejection and depression arise. Effort is made for effort's sake and not for result's sake. To make right effort is wholesome and beneficial in itself. If effort is made in the right direction, it is good karma without having to show specific and expected results. If there is no immediately visible and noticeable result from meditation, good karma is made in any case because of the wholesome intention.
Right effort brings its own reward, but we hardly ever notice this. We're expecting something tangible. I've been trying so hard and I still can't concentrate, or I've been so loving to my children, but they don't appreciate it, or I've looked after my ailing aunt for so long and she never has a nice word to say about it. This is the wrong way of looking at it. The effort made is the good karma, is the result. What other people say or what other results there may be, is a secondary consideration. Sometimes one really achieves concentration. Sometimes somebody really appreciates what one has done. But that has no bearing on the efficacy of one's effort. If we don't see it that way, our effort will always be dependent upon results. It will come and go because results come and go. If effort does not remain constant, it's obviously going to be much less effective. Right effort has to be steady.
Right mindfulness. The next step is right mindfulness. Any time you may have practiced it, you may have become aware of what it means. If one puts one's foot down on the ground and knows nothing else except that the foot has been put down on the ground, that is mindfulness. When one puts the spoon in one's mouth and knows nothing else except putting the spoon in one's mouth, that is mindfulness. This feels quite different from the ordinary way of everyday living, and unless you have known that difference, you haven't yet practiced mindfulness. At the moment of complete mindfulness, there is also complete oblivion to everything else. It's one-pointed. That one-pointedness takes care of letting go of problems because one can't think of two things at once. That one-pointedness, when used in meditation, eventually creates blissful absorption. In daily living it takes care of problems that are no longer uppermost in the mind, and in meditation it creates bliss. What more can it do?
It can also help to purify. When one actually knows what one is doing, saying, and thinking, one is going to be very careful that it is all wholesome and that one is not overwhelmed by an impetuous, unwholesome reaction. In this way purification takes place. Sometimes there is confusion about what right mindfulness means. I've heard it said that right mindfulness is directed only toward that which is right and proper. That's not logical. Right mindfulness means that one is aware and attentive all the time. How would one ever change that which is not wholesome if one has not paid attention to it and is oblivious to its existence?
The four foundations of mindfulness are mindfulness of the body, its actions, its movements, its breath, its 32 parts, its skeleton, its corpse, mindfulness of feeling, the physical sensations or the emotional feelings, mindfulness of thought, thinking processes, knowing that the thinking is going on, knowing that the mind is working, knowing that there is a thought, knowing the thought, and the fourth one, mindfulness of mind objects, knowing whether the thought is wholesome or unwholesome. Traditionally, mindfulness of mind objects is explained as knowing whether any of the 5 hindrances, the 7 factors of enlightenment, any of the path factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, or any of the 6 sense contacts have arisen. But in practical terms and for everyday usage, that's a bit cumbersome. Most people don't remember all the points against which to check. It's sufficient to know whether the thought has been wholesome or unwholesome. Obviously, all 4 foundations can't be practiced at once. In meditation, we pick and choose. We either watch the in and out breath or do walking meditation, both of which belong to mindfulness of the body. Or we may use mindfulness of feeling and sensations. If we realize that we have been disturbed by thinking, that's mindfulness of the thought process. When we give the thought a name and realize it's either hate or dislike or love and compassion, we are using mindfulness of the mind objects. So we choose in meditation where we want to put our attention.
In daily living, it's not quite like that. There we have to put our attention on what's momentarily appropriate. If we cross a busy street and keep our attention strictly on our steps, it's not going to be a skillful means of staying alive. We will have to watch what the cars are doing. In this case, we have to become aware of what's going on around us. If we're talking on the telephone, it's not likely that we should put our attention on how we are holding the receiver. If we did that, we wouldn't know what to say. We have to keep our attention on the thinking process and the speech that results from that. Whatever is appropriate, that's where the attention is.
Mindfulness is the one mental factor that can and must be practiced in every waking moment. There are 24 hours in the day, and we might, if all goes well, meditate 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour at night. We might sleep 6 or 7 hours, which leaves us with at least 15 hours in the day. If we forget about being mindful for those 15 hours in the day, we might as well forget about meditating and about practicing the Buddha's teaching. We are only paying lip service. When mindfulness is established as a practice, it eventually becomes a habit, which makes life smooth because one is able to avoid pitfalls. It works like the brakes on a car. It's dangerous to drive a car without brakes. If we live life without mindfulness, it's equally risky. We're constantly in danger of colliding with someone and hurting ourselves and others.
When mindfulness is practiced, it doesn't mean that we are submissive and react in the way others expect. That's not mindfulness, that's compliance. Mindfulness is knowing what we're feeling, thinking, and doing. When we know that, we become aware of our reactions. We are not concerned with acting in accordance with expectations. We are concerned with the purification of ourselves.
Right effort, the 4 supreme efforts, can only be successful if coupled with mindfulness. All the path factors need mindfulness as a support. Mindfulness goes together with clear comprehension. Mindfulness is the knowing factor, simply knowing, expressed succinctly in a Japanese haiku that goes like this. The old pond. The frog jumps in. Plop. When a frog jumps into a pond, many things happen. The water ripples, the frog disappears, there might be sunshine glistening on the drops of water. All these are extraneous. Mindfulness goes to the essence, to the point, and that's plop. That's all that really happened. That's the essence.
That's knowing only, which has as its companion clear comprehension. Clear comprehension understands what has happened and how to make use of it. Clear comprehension consists of 4 parts: knowing the purpose, knowing whether one is using skillful means, ascertaining whether purpose and means are within the Dhamma, and knowing whether one has actually achieved one's purpose.
Whenever we speak without purpose, mindfulness and clear comprehension have been abandoned. When we speak with a purpose, but don't know how to express ourselves, we have no skillful means at our disposal. Our discriminating awareness helps us to realize whether we are thinking, speaking, or acting in accordance with the truth of Dhamma. If we don't get the results we want, we obviously haven't used the right means. Mindfulness in speech and action needs clear comprehension as its companion, knowing the purpose, the skillful means, the awareness of Dhamma, and the results. When we live with mindfulness, there is a marked difference in our awareness. We know what's happening with ourselves, but we don't become involved in it. When anger arises, we know it's arising, but we don't have to become angry. That's a great skill. When there is boredom, we know boredom has arisen, but we don't have to become bored or frustrated. We just know the arising and also the ceasing of all mental states.
Mindfulness is available to everyone and is used by everyone for survival, but since survival is a lost cause, we might as well use some more mindfulness in order to become liberated and free. Mindfulness is the skillful means and clear comprehension, the wisdom that can discriminate. Mindfulness is non-judgmental, but clear comprehension has the aspect of differentiating, so we can change our direction if necessary.
Right concentration. Right concentration is found in the meditative absorptions that are mentioned by the Buddha in discourse after discourse as the way and the means, but not as the goal. They provide a pleasant abiding, he says, a pleasant way of living and working for insight. If one gets attached to them, one just has another attachment, added to the many one has already. However, the meditative absorptions are the necessary means for getting the mind into shape to see clearly. Right concentration needs all the other factors of the Noble Eightfold Path as a base. Without moral conduct, right intention and right view, right effort and right mindfulness, it cannot arise. Because it needs all of those, it's mentioned at the end. Also because it is the one that can get us to the point of departure, from being a worldling to becoming a noble person. Right view stands at the beginning because without it nothing happens. Right concentration stands at the end because it needs all the other factors in order to function and constitutes the means for achieving penetrating insight.
When right concentration has succeeded and a deliberate attempt at insight has been made, right view arises. This will be the right view of liberation. At the end we have come full circle to right view of self, which means non-self. We cannot find non-self. We cannot find what isn't there. Therefore we can only constantly inquire into what we believe to be self. We believe body, feelings, perception, mental formations, and our sense consciousness to be self. We need to inquire into anything that appears to be me. Unless we have self fully in hand, are master of it, and have seen it fully, we will not be able to let go of it. If I don't know where my clock is, if I don't have it in hand, I can't give it away. Only if I know exactly what and where it is, can I let go of it. If I'm looking for the clock and can't find it, there is nothing I can do about it. The same applies to self.
The inquiry is into me. What is this body? Is it really me and mine? If it becomes a corpse, is it still mine? Am I going to say this is my corpse? Who's going to say, this is my corpse? This is the line of inquiry. Are these feelings really mine? Why do I get the ones I don't want? Who's making them come? Why do I get a pain in my right knee? Why do I get all the thoughts I don't want? Why do I get thoughts that make me unhappy? Who is getting unhappy? Who is this me? Was me yesterday or was me today or is me tomorrow? Any line of inquiry to find out where is me, what is me? And when I finally find it, then I can let go of the delusion. The inquiry into non-self has to start with the inquiry into self, and as it becomes more and more obvious that there's some misconception about self, it also becomes clearer that the thinking process can use different channels.
All the factors we have spoken about are ways and means of diminishing ego, making it a bit smaller. Concentration is an important aspect, because at the time when the mind is fully concentrated, there's no thought of, I am, I can, I will be, I want, I don't want. When the meditative absorptions are practiced regularly, the I is often diminished and one can see a little more clearly. As long as we have practiced neither concentration nor mindfulness, the ego takes itself for granted and remains its usual normal size, as big as the people around one will allow. With mindfulness and concentration, that changes.
The Noble Eightfold Path goes from relative right view to absolute right view, and in the end, one becomes the Noble Eightfold Path. There is no need to practice it any more at that point nor to try to remember it. No need to make an effort with each step, because the Noble Eightfold Path has become one's natural way of being. The arahant has constant right view and right intention. There can be no wrong speech, wrong action, or wrong livelihood. There is always right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. With us, a little bit at a time. Only practice makes perfect.